Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing today? Let's check it out. Of course, we're going to give people time to fall in. Shout out for Jeff. Jeff, you in the house super early. Hopefully, he's still on. Just checking my little. It's on my phone, so we're rolling.
According to the latest research from the Murdies,
Oh,
some
man,
companies can accelerate threat containment by.
I know everybody's watching football probably, so they're going to have to check them on the replay. Let me share my screen. Man. Gonna go a little over AWS Route 53. Y'all know I'm on my AWS kick, so you know how we do it. We'll go over a few videos that I went over the week, then we get to the AWS portion. Um, you can put in your security questions in the box, and I'll answer them. So once again, I know it's football season, but I'm just gonna continue to keep grinding and keep rolling. So once again, let's go over the videos and give people time to file in. Shout out to Casual Economist. Let's go over the videos I did this week. And once again, we get on that AWS kick. Get my certs on. Let's see. Once again, if you got any cybersecurity questions or technology questions, just drop them in the box, and you know how we do it. Oh, how you doing, Person Center Cyber? Glad you could make it. It's AWS Azure season right now. Facts on that. But for those, you can throw Google in there, man. Google ain't no joke. They in that love triangle. That's the big three. They taking most of the market share. So either one of those three, you doing well. So once again, we're gonna talk about the videos and we're gonna jump into AWS. Once again, if you got any cyber security questions, just drop them in the box. If I don't know, there's people in here probably will know. I just thought this was interesting. This is a millennial technology. I did technology and relationship. Uh, People were asking, should you share your personal location with your partner or spouse? Right. So I'm like, no, but I'm old and grumpy. So from a technology perspective and how technology intertwines with just relationships and in everyday life, right? Those are things you got to think about as a couple, as a union, right? So I just thought that, some people thought it was uh, personal invasion of privacy and space. Some people thought, yeah, you should. We're a couple, so that should be. Come on, casual economists. You can't say hell to the knob. Shout out to casual economists. Hell to the knob. So I just thought that was, and from a cybersecurity perspective, that falls under me. That's mass surveillance almost, right? So because if you sharing it with your partner, if hackers hack into their phone, right, or their PC or whatever, right? So now you're opening yourself up for surveillance, right? But I can understand from a relationship standpoint, especially a millennial type relationship. I understand. I'm old and grumpy. Don't nobody want me, but shout out to Casual Economist. He said hell to the now. But once again, that's how technology and society plays in a part. And as a couple or relationship, y'all got to figure that out as a union, as a group. I just thought that was interesting. I need to send that to B2B. That's a young man's video right there. I just thought it was interesting though. Shout out to B2B. I need to reach about Twitter 0-day attack. 5 million accounts were exposed, really 5.4 if you look at that. For me, it's going to happen sooner or later to any large company or big company. I think Person Center Cyber, I think she had um, one of those things where you pick on which one you want, one of those voting things. So I just think it's inevitable. That's why you gotta get your zero trust on, get your lockdown on to try to protect yourself, and get your lawyers on to make sure you don't get sued, right? So all that's part of it. So but that's it. We all know, and that's why we got jobs. That's why cybersecurity, everybody's trying to get the bag. You make six figures because if big companies getting hacked, we got a long way to go, right, to get secure. Okay, yeah, person, yeah, she did the vote. I remember that. That hit my. I got a good memory for. Oh gosh, shout out to her. Go subscribe to her. She's got excellent content. She's kind of me. I'm compliance. She's kind of the policy life great writer, which I suck at. My boss told me I wasn't a good policy writer. I told him he didn't hurt my feelings, but I got a couple strong viewpoints. But no, I'll go check out, subscribe to her. She growing, we all growing. Let's see. And this one, this is no take on Roe v. Wade. I'm particular cybersecurity, but the FBI and them got a search warrant, and they got the messengers off of Facebook, right? And they convicted somebody for having an abortion, right? So for me, I thought that was mass oversight. So they let you know Facebook be watching your messages, right? And search warrants and search vehicles can get that information, right? So I remember when you're communicating on Messenger, even if you're on private between 2 or 3 people, that information is not private and it's open. So I just thought that was an interesting tech that they took this young lady's Facebook messages, from Messenger and actually charged her. So, you can go check it out. It was a known story. I'm real big on mass surveillance. So that's one thing I'm going to start doing more on my channel. Society changes of technology, right? So when you do social media, it's not private. People with search warrants can get those messages and post and charge you with things that you didn't think you should be charged for. What app conversions are encrypted? Yeah, but you got to remember that they are encrypted, but the encryption for WhatsApp, I believe, is still held by the company and not by the individual. So even with WhatsApps, I think they can still decrypt those messages, JM. I need to look on that. I think I did a video on that. I did a video on it. I think Ty asked me. I did a video on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. I did a video on like 4 of them. You can still, they are encrypted, but if I come with the search warrant, I think I can still get the keys because WhatsApp is owned by who bought WhatsApp, JM? Did Facebook buy WhatsApp? Now I gotta Google it, JM. I think Facebook bought WhatsApp. Google that for me, JM. Ain't Facebook on? Didn't Facebook buy WhatsApp? Meta, yeah. Facebook and Meta. So yeah, casual. Yeah, it's kind of. JM and casual. I do not trust Facebook/Meta. I think if I come with the search word Facebook and /Meta gonna snitch on me. I don't trust them. You trusting Facebook, JM? Are you trusting? Is that what you telling me, JM? You trusting Facebook? I know you ain't telling me that, JM. Is that what you telling me, buddy? Don't tell me that, man. I know you ain't. I know you ain't trusting Mark Zuckerberg to keep your messages encrypted, man. Come on, JM. I know we not falling for that one, man. Come on, man. So yeah, I did a video. I got to look through there, JM. I'm pretty sure I did a video on that. So everybody I know, I'm on my Amazon kick. That's the 800-pound gorilla. Big on cybersecurity. I think not the next thing. We're like everybody's moving to the cloud. Every big government agency's to the cloud. So I'm getting cloud certifications, trying to get cloud certified. I'll be 55 this year, people. I'm old. I need another 10 years and I'm out the game. So I think the cloud, I'm trying to get AWS certified, get my cloud security on. That's going to take me to 65 and I'm done. I'm going to pass the baton out to the young people. But so that's why I've been grinding hard on the cloud, right? You got to catch the next wave, the next skill set, right? One thing I love about IT and cybersecurity, if you catch the hot thing, you can make the bag, you can make 6 figures. But if you miss it, you can. I know a lot of power builders, COBOL guys, and a lot of guys, they miss the next wave and they're starving, right? So you got to keep your skills up so you can, stay in the game. Technology never sleeps. So when I send a message on WhatsApp, it tells me that the conversation in encryption makes me feel more secure. I think you getting suckered, JM. I think you getting tricked. Don't believe the hype, JM. Don't believe. WhatsApp, I think is cool. But Facebook/Meta/Mark Zuckerberg, man. That's that big tech, man. I think they'll sell you out with a search warrant, JM. That's a project we need to take on together, JM. We need to check on the encryption of that and see what double check that. I don't trust him, JM. I'm old and grumpy, man. I do not trust Mark, man. I think he's a brilliant tacticianer. I think he's making it. I think he's a brilliant people. Me and we weren't arguing, but shout out to Citizen Lou. He said Facebook is. I'm like, Facebook makes $4 billion a year, man. Even though it's old and outdated, Snapchat's hipper, TikTok, everybody's TikToking with the little dance. Facebook still makes a shitload of money, man, every quarter. So you can talk about it's dead, but they make a ton of money. And shout out to Mark, man. I give his investments are forward looking. He tried to buy Snapchat for like $800 million, and the kid told him no. So shout out. So I think Facebook/Meta, and I'm real big on the metaverse. I think the next thing, I don't know if they're going to control it, but I think that's going to be the next big push. I don't know if it's going to work out the way he thinks, but I think a lot of the inventions you need to do the metaverse is going to spin off to a totally different companies. I think training is going to be different with the goggles. I think what's bad for society, and I'm going to get it back on my AWS before I get on my soapbox, is if your community doesn't make enough money to support your school system, which most poor communities in the COP, they're going to just shut down physical schools, and you're going to do the metaverse for your schools, right? The downside is that a lot of parents use schools to go to work as daycare, right? I think you get a lot with interactions for schools, but shout out to person-centered cyber. I'm gonna put on a spot. I think a lot of people are homeschooling their kids too, right? So it's pluses and minuses on that. So I just think we need to be ready with that society shift and what that looks like. So let me get on my snowbox. That'll be for my Tuesday. What works look like in the future segment I'm gonna start with. So let's get on. Route 53 is Amazon DNS, right? When you buy your ProfessorBlackOps.com DNS URL, you can do that through Facebook. And what does that look like? And we're going to talk a little bit about availability, disaster recovery sites, security. How do you lock down your DNS? I think a lot of people take that for granted. So we'll talk about 3 slides of how to lock it down. That'll be the security part of the course. Yeah, shut out. Yeah, I think homeschooling is growing, and for a certain segment, I think that's definitely the best way. Person-centered cyber. I think there's a lot of things lacking in the educational system, and I think if you as a parent has those type of skills and new knowledge to look to the future, I definitely think that's the best thing. I just think there's a whole segment that doesn't have that skill set that I worry about on that. But yeah, definitely homeschooling is growing. I think the pandemic and new technology, right? I think this is going to help homeschooling better because it's better tools, better curriculum. YouTube has a whole educational thing, whatever you want to learn and however you want to learn it. And tools, I always tell people, everybody doesn't learn the same, right? So you got to find your learning technique and how to facilitate that for you to learn the best, right? Like I've been, learning my AWS and certs. I found a couple things I thought fit well, but most people know I taught college for 10 years at the local community college level. So I did that for a decade. So what is DNS? This is actually on AWS's website. End user, your DNS resolver is your domain name, queries on the behalf. Amazon, of course, has their console. You can do the Amazon route DNS, return IP address, and we'll dig into that. You can do health checks too on your DNS to figure out what endpoints or what regions you want to go through. If any of that fails, it goes to your CloudWatch coming from your console. You could do hosted zone creation, traffic policies. You can actually enroll your DNS names, right? Once again, like ProfessorBlackOps, you get that for your DNS name before you can put it on your website, right? You can actually use AWS to register that now, right? As an authoritative source. So what we're going to talk about, route end users to your site reliably with the globally dispersed domain name system. Auto scaling, set up your DNS routing in a minute with the domain name. Registration, you can show visual tools for your flow. Customize your DNS routing policies to reduce latency, improve application availability, and to maintain compliance. So the compliance piece of that is, everybody know I make my money on compliance, especially federal compliance. So part of compliance is how do you do disaster recovery? If your site goes down, federal compliance tells you, you got to be up in an hour, 2 hours, or you got 24 hours to bring your site back up. Right. I work with a lot of times with the IRS. They want you to have your disaster recovery site, I believe, up in 4 hours. Right. So if your main site goes down, you should automatically fail over and they give you 4 hours to be up. Right. If you're doing HIPAA and hospital, I think they want you to be up in 15 minutes. Right, which is struggle for a rural hospital will struggle with that, right? So they give you it's called RTO, return of operations, and RPO, return of point. Really is how much data you're going to lose, right? So if you're going to say I'm gonna come up in 15 minutes and I can lose 1 minute of data, what is your disaster recovery site going to look? And we got some slides that are going to touch on that too. Once again, if you got any security questions, just throw them in the box. I laugh because I'm still laughing at when we're talking about, would you share your your location with your partner or spouse? I think guys would comment and say, hell no, I don't know why that's funny. So what does Route 53 look like for your domain name? Right, standard stuff on the internet. You do your www.example.com. It's your DNS root server. Comes to the server with your name, goes to your name server right there in the blue, comes to your Route 53, right? When you put your www.com, it really comes back with the IP address, right? When computers find each other, they really use an IP address, right? So when the Route 53 comes back with the IP address, it really knows what web server to go through at the bottom. That's the one with the 192.0.0.4, which comes back a picture. I think that's the Mona Lisa. That could be Lil Wayne. That could be Melissa Ford, whoever, right? But that's how it goes. Really, you want that IP address, and that's really how the internet communicates, right? That's IPv4. They should have showed an IPv6, right? We're running out of address spaces, right? We got to upgrade to the IPv6. So when you talk about Route 53 and how you actually come up with take your domain name, sync it up with the IP address, get that on your DNS resolver out on the internet, really finds your web server. That 192, of course, right? That's going to be local to your AWS resources. It's going to hit an EC2. It could be a container. It could be a static website with S3, right? So you can actually hook that, and we'll look at that coming up, is hook that URL actually to what web server, right? Load balancer, web server, container, right? You can link all that up inside of AWS. That's what the beauty of it is. And we're going to touch on this. We're not going to get too crazy. So DNS records, these are all the DNS records. A record, quad A record, C name, alias, CIA, certificate of authority, MX is mail exchange. So when you set up your DNS record, if you have a mail server, right, you can point that record to your mail server, name server pointer, security of authority. So, but usually when you're talking about a standard company or middle-sized company, you're going to talk about C name here, canonical name record, and A address for the alias, right? That's usually what you use in setting up your basic website. So we're going to touch on them a little bit more. Here they go on a much easier site. Once again, A for address. 2 is for a quad A name. This record is type does allow you to point to a root name, to a host or FQDN name. C name is the canonical. An alias that points to another domain or subdomain, but never an IP address, allows record mapping from the FQ name to multiple hosts, right? So the reason it points to multiple hosts is you could be spreading your traffic over 4 or 5 hosts, and you could be using one of those for failover, right? So if it tries to communicate with one and one is down, and 2 is those could be in different regions, and we'll talk about latency if you're running a global website. 5 is SOA, start of the authority. Stores information about the domains, and it's used to direct how DNS zone is propagated. NS is a name server, specifies which name server are authoritative for your domain. A sub domain. MX is mail exchange. TX is text. SR is service, allows services such as instant messaging or VoIP. SPF is sender policy framework. PTR is pointer. A reverse A or quad A record, which maps to an IP address or domains. 12 is quick tips, allows you to check typos and mistakes when entering your DNS records. Right. I know I went over that pretty quick. These are the advanced techniques. I probably do a video when you really get into the depths of DNS, right? Most people ping, right? When you ping it, it comes back with your IP address, and that's really what you want. When you're going to ping your URL, it's going to come back with your IP address. Number one, it tells you that device is listening. Number two is you get the IP address, right? And you can take that and do stuff with it. Does assigning a common service like DNS to a different random port instead of using the default port 53 can help increase security? Or is it best to leave common services to their default port? That's an excellent question, JM. If it's a service that you're going to use outside of your company, like you're doing some, we use it for mail services to look up addresses. If you're going to use it outside your company, I would use it the standard ports. If you're going to use it internally, especially from a small group, I wouldn't mind you switching those ports out, right? A little more obfuscation. So you know, because most people can guess the standard port. So if it's something internally to your company, I would definitely think about switching ports to do that, and I think that would be more secure. But when you're doing outside a company, or even if you got a bigger company, people expect things to be on standard port from your help desk. A lot of times you got a different IT service. So if the bigger your organization, the more I would keep it on standard ports, right? Because people expect it to be there. But from a security perspective, that's actually not bad switching those ports. So once again, if it's a smaller company or something that you could control, I would switch ports. Let's talk about Route 53. I should have made that bigger, so we'll just look at it. So Route 53 is the DNS. Remember, we're spinning up resources on our AWS infrastructure, and if we're in two different regions, right, the Route 53 is going to do a health check. It's going to say, okay, our endpoints are looking good, or no, our endpoints are looking bad. Go to CloudWatch, right, which is where we keep our logs. SNS is basically just sending email. We can send an email to the security team and to ops team. And a lot of times too this is failover, right? So if this is one of the regions we're using, right? If it comes back as bad health, Route 53 is send it to another region that has good health, and go ahead once again and put that in our log files and send an email out to security and to our operations, right? Even if it's in failover mode, security likes to know we're in failover. We're in failover mode. Why? Because that puts security on. We need to be counting down. Number one is, why did we fail over? When are we going to go back? And depending on the compliance, from a compliance perspective, a lot of times you have to document that. Oh, shout out to Person Center Cyber for the $20 chat. I was going to be on the die today, but Person Center Cyber, go subscribe to her. She just bought PBO some barbecue today. Shout out to her. So let's read this Route 53 at the top. Route 53 health checks monitors the health of your resources, such as web servers and email servers. You can optionally configure Amazon CloudWatch alarms for your health checks so that you can receive notifications when a resource becomes unavailable. That's not optional. You have to do that. The reason why it's not optional, once again, I do federal level. I do big systems. The feds, NIST, 800-53, HIPAA purposes, you have to write that in the log files and notify somebody. Those are actually hard checks you have to do, right? So you could create your health checks and specify values that define how you want the health checks to work. Route 53 can send a request to the endpoint at the interval that you specified in your health check. If the endpoint doesn't respond, Route 53 starts to count the number of consecutive requests that the endpoint doesn't respond. If Route 53 considers an endpoint unhealthy, and if you configure notifications of health check, Route 53 notifies CloudWatch. Once again, that's there. If you configure notifications for health check, CloudWatch triggers an alarm using SNS, simple notification, which is basically email, and notifies the specified recipients, right? That's standard and should be on, even if you're a small company, if something goes down, you need to log it into your logs and send somebody an email. Even if they don't see that email tomorrow, you need to notify people that your infrastructures are having issues, right? So what type of routing can you do? Simple. DNS responsible for providing IP address associated with the name. Failover for primary down based on health checks, like we just saw in the other thing. So that's primary down. It's going to roll over to the request, right? So that's failover. Routes to a secondary destination. Geolocation. If using geolocation, you're in Europe, so you should route it to the closest region. Geoproximity routes you to the closest region within a geographic area. A lot of big companies, if you have multiple sites around the globe, you might want your Europe users to go to a Europe region, right? Because you got specific content for that region. It could be language, it could be certain content, it could be a certain menu, right? So sometimes you want to say, okay, this person's in this region, sending them to this particular website or backend, right? So a lot of times you want to use the geolocation or the geoproximity. Latency, directly based on the lowest latency route to the resource. Multi-value, returns several IPs and function as a basic load balancer. Way to use the relative weights to assign resources to determine which route to go. Right? So that's the beauty of AWS. They give you different routing policy depending on what you're trying to do for your company. All right. And I always think small, you got to think bigger nation companies, right, that have websites and resources around the world. Depending on what those users need, you could use any one of these type routing policies. So simple routing lets you configure standard DNS records with no special 53 routing such as waiting or latency. With simple routing, you typically route traffic to a single resource. For example, a web server to your website. If you choose simple routing in Route 53 console, you cannot create multiple records that have the same name and type. You can specify multiple values in the same record, such as multiple IP addresses, if you use the simple routing. If you specify multi-value in a routing, 52 returns all values to the recursive resolver in a random order. All right, so that's it. Simple routing. It comes, you got the load balancer, which is going to route you to this availability zone, and you're going to go to the same one, right? So that's it. And that's what most people usually have, especially when you're starting out. You got a route, you go into a application load balancer. That's the region, east, west, midwest. It's going to go through your services. Usually this is a elastic load balancer, application security group, right? So if you get more heads to the spin up more instances, and you can grow and spin up or spin down. That's the beautiful thing of being in the cloud. You're going to use the resources you need. So let's talk about failover. See what man JM got in there. Route 53 is one that ensures that it's high availability in case one data center goes down, or does it choose another geographic automatically you specify? It's both. Route 53 is usually high availability for failover, and we'll see it coming up in the next slide. If you're in multiple regions, high availability is usually, if I go to run region and I got an auto scaling group. So let's back up here. Let me back up here. So Route 53 is sending me to the same region. I still have high availability, right? Because I got an auto scaling group right here on these instances, right? Those could be web servers. So if I get extra hit, it'll automatically spin up a web server in here, JM, in my VPC. So I have high availability here. But if this whole region goes down, I'm toast. But let's be realistic. The odds of an AWS region goes down. It goes down maybe, a region goes down once every 2 years, probably on AWS. So when you're talking about Route 53, usually you're talking about high availability among regions, right? But still, we still have high availability within the VPC, right? I can still spin up multiple web server, multiple app servers. I could still in my VPC. Remember, in my region, I could have 3 data centers in this region alone. So I'm in 3 data centers in the Ohio region. So, but the Route 53, if my Ohio region goes down, if for some reason I couldn't get through 3 data centers, then I could fail over to the East Coast or something. But I'm still gonna have high availability within that region. And you'll see that coming up, JM. Let me know if that makes sense or not. But I think it'll be more apparent, especially in the next one, JM. Failover routing lets you route traffic to resources when the resources is healthy, or different resources, first resource is unhealthy. The primary and secondary records can route traffic to anything from an S3 bucket that's configured as a website to a complex tree of records, right? So this is the failover. I think this right here, I think it makes a little more sense for you, Jay. Let me get that off that was a good question, though. Like you talking about. So here in my East region, right, there's 3 data centers in the East region, right? So this whole region would have to go down before I need to fail over to the US West region. Right, Jam. So in my US East region, I think I have 3 data centers. So I have high availability within that region. So this whole region would have to go down. And remember, that's one of the things beautiful about AWS. There's 3 data centers. I think they're anywhere from 60 miles to 100 miles apart. They have different power. They have actually even different electric companies go through each of those 3 data centers in that whole region. Right, so you still have high availability within that region. Once again, that whole region would have to go down. And in any AWS region, at a minimum, you have 2 data centers, and most of them you have 3 data centers. Once again, they're at least 60 miles apart. So you're still gonna get high availability within in those regions. So it's really rare that a whole region would go down. JM, like I said, it happens every like 2 years, and they only go down for maybe 2 or 3 hours before they go over something. So this is the failover. We got 100% here. Then if that, once again, if that whole US East region went out, we could fail over to the US West region. Right, 100% traffic. Once again, if those 3 data centers would go down, right, then I would fail over to the US East region. Right, so that's, once again, that's the beauty of AWS and why you spend all that money. And the cool thing about it is you don't you can spin it up where, and then we'll talk about it. There's different DR capabilities, and depending on what level of response you need, of course, if you needed to come up in 1 minute, it's gonna cost you a little more. You got a couple hours, it'll cost you a lot less, and we'll get to that. But now, shout out, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense. Does AWS use they're usually 9.999. They're a little higher than that, JM. I just actually took a test on 995 is like the pilot project. And we'll talk about that. The way you configure your DR site, and we're going to talk about DR, tells you what your SLA will be for that. Is that 99.5? Is that 999? And you can configure out your uptime. Once again, that's RTO and RPO. How quick and how much data you want to lose, and have that spin up. Is you're in charge of configuring that, JM, for your disaster recovery site. And we're going to talk about that at the end. I think I got 4 slides on the level of your DR site with the 995s and the 49s and all of that. But once again, this is the failover. 100% to 1. If that goes down, you just spin up to your East region. Right, so geolocation routing lets you choose the resource that you serve your traffic based on the geographic location of your users, meaning location the DNS queries originate from. For example, you might query all your queries from Europe to be routed to a Elastic Load Balancer that is in Frankfurt region. when you use geolocation routing, you can localize your content and present some or all your website in the language of your users. You can also use geolocation routing to restrict distribution of content to only the location which you have distribution rights. Another possible use is the balancing load across endpoints in a predictable way, easy to manage. So each user location is consistently routed, right? Sometimes you might buy software and software licenses that can only run in Europe. There's some federal software that you can't run outside of CONUS, which is the continental United States. So you would use geolocation routing to make sure only the certain population could get to that type of content, right? So once again, it's the originating traffic is US, and originating traffic is in Europe. So you would send it to that US region and that Europe region, right? Let me float that out on the top, right? So you got your US East region and your European region, right? So depending on your DNS and how you would set it up, depending on how you want to go there. So geo proximity. Routing lets Amazon route traffic to your resource based on the geographic location of your users and your resource. You can actually choose to route more traffic or less to a given resource, specifying a value known as a bias. A bias spans or shrinks the size of geographic region from which the traffic is routed to the source. The use of geo-proximity routing, you must use Route 53 traffic flow. You could create geo-proximity rules for resources and specify one of the following values. If you're using AWS resource regions, you could create the resources in. If you're using a non-AWS resource, the latitude and longitude of the resource. It's totally optional, changes the size of the geographical region based on the bias. So those are the geographic regions you create. Depending on where you at, it depends on which resources you get routed to. All right, so the first one was I'm in the US, so I'm gonna get it routed to the US, right? This is I'm in another country, even though it's from the US, I can get routed to a different proximity of where I'm located at. Right. So if I'm somewhere here, right, I'm gonna get 3. If I'm somewhere 4 and 5, right? So you can actually have your proximity, and you could be actually from United States all the way up to Canada as a whole proximity, right? And skip some regions, but because you want it to be in the proximity of those servers, right? Latency based, if your application is hosted on AWS regions, you can improve performance for your users by serving them up to regions that provided the low latency. Data about latency between users and resources based entirely on traffic flow between the users and AWS. Even you aren't using resources in the AWS region, the actual latency between the users and the resources can vary from AWS latency data. This is true if your resources are located in the same city as the AWS region. To use latency-based region, you can create latency records for your resources in multiple AWS regions. When the Route 53 queries a DNS for your domain or subdomain, it determines the AWS regions you created latency records, determine which region gives you the lower latency. Basically, it's how fast does that query comes back. Even though you're closer to a AWS data center, it could be actually quicker coming from a data center far away. You could be in a highly congested area, like in San Francisco. It might be cheaper to go through the Midwest because there's not as much traffic going through there. Or somebody could be running some heavy thing and just shutting down the whole internet. It could be a DDoS attack to a big company in that region, right? They're shutting down that whole region, and it would just be quicker for you to go to the Midwest region. Once again, I do a lot of, they have an Ohio data center. That's the one I usually work out. I'm in the Midwest. So the latency, depending on what's going on in that region, it checks the network, the internet traffic, right? Somebody could be working on a big router in that region could be out, and it could be quicker actually, once again, to go to a different region, right? So that's latency. So if you have something that's time sensitive, you would want AWS to pick the quickest route for that. So, but once again, when you start doing that and using those resources, AWS is going to charge you a little more, right? Because it's using latency. It has to keep track of all that. So when you pick those DNS records, it's going to just charge you a little more for that. So that's the latency base, right? That's US West 1 and South is at the bottom west. So depending on the latency routing, it would Route 53 is going to pick the quickest route it believes, right, from those querying records. Every time it queries a data center or checks your resources, it's going to store the time of that so it'll know which one will be the quickest, right, to get that. Multi-value answering. Routing lets you configure Route 53 to return multiple values, such as IP address for web servers in response to the DNS queries. You can specify multiple values for almost any record. Multi-value answering routing also lets you check the health of each resource. So Route 53 returns only the values from the healthiest resource. It's not a substitute for load balancing, but the ability to return multiple checkable IP addresses in your DNS names, right? So once again, it's doing a health check. It's going to go through whatever region, and it's going to bring back the IPs it thinks are good from that health region, right? Once again, though, your application load balancer is going to be doing that too from a region standpoint. So that's it. Once again, it's going to come back. So those two resources will come all the way back as good IPs from your Route 53 checks, right? Because you can actually have EC2 checks in your Route 53, right? So you're going to have EC2 checks, and your load balancer are actually going to do checks on that too, right? 2 is that's just showing one data center. So usually your ELB be going on at least 2 data centers there too. So what's up? I was just talking about you before the billions. Go check out my man before the billions. Young guy coming up. My role model, man. He was live streaming for 30 hours one day. PBO had to go to bed, man. But shout out to him. But no, let's check it out. So yeah, you the Route 53 is gonna do a health check on your load balancing. Remember, there's multiple data centers coming back from that elastic load balancer. So weighted routes lets you associate multiple resources with a single domain or subdomain. You can choose how much traffic is routed. This can be useful for a variety of purposes, including load balancing and testing new software. Weighted routing, you can create records that have the same name for each type of resource. You can assign a relative weight to each of resources. So you might have, we'll look at this. One region might have more resources into it. So you might send 70% of the traffic to your US region. That could be your main region where you're doing most of your work. So you might have more EC2s, bigger EC2s. US East might be your DR site. So you only got a few things spun up in there. So you can get it tested. And 2 is, it's called blue-green testing. If I have a new release, I might put it on the one where 30% of the traffic goes through, and that 30% on the US East region could test it. If there's no bugs, then I can go ahead and populate my US West region with the rest of my users with 70%, right? That's known as blue-green testing. So there's a few reasons why you want to do weighted traffic between 2 different VPCs or region, right? So before the billions, I got a quick question. If you're still there, man, I'm gonna spin up to this. That was actually, let me see. I don't know if you saw that video. Is technology B2B, technology and relationship. Would you share your personal location with your partner, your spouse, so she would know wherever you went, or wherever you was at with your homies, she would have your personal location? Would you do that B2B? That's a young man's question, a millennial's question, man. Would you share your location with your significant other? Shout out to B2B, putting him on the spot, man. See if he'll answer that. See if he's still here. So shout out B2B. Let me know your take on that, B2B. You might want to do that and do a stream on. That's a young man's question. But would you share your personal location, spouse, with your spouse? I think Casual Economist said, hell no. Him or JM said, hell no. The question to you, B2B. But we were just talking about disaster recovery. That's real big on any of your cloud certifications. Once again, I got 4 of them, and these were on all of them. So if you were doing active passive, backup restore, you get hours to bring those back up. Low priority uses, provisional hour resources. You restore backups and after the event, right? Pilot light means you're back up in 10 minutes. Your data lives, your service or idles, provision some of your AWS resource, and you will scale after the event. Cautious. Now, if you want warm standby, right, you always running, but smaller, critical. You got a lot of your web servers and database already up and running, but they're up and running and you're not using them, right? So that's costing you money. You can go active, multi-site, zero downtime, no data loss, mission critical, right? So you have 2 active sites. So if one of them goes down, the other one's already up and already, ready to take information. But once again, you're paying for that level of uptime, right? So we're going to take a physical look at this. So this is the pilot light. So you got your data center up and running, right? So if your data center goes down, you have all those resources spun up as a secondary site. Once again, that's our route DNS. So once this site's down, it's going to fail over. And we'll have all our standby load balancers. So we got all our auto scaling group. So I probably had one, so it's going to take time to spin up to be able to handle it. We got snapshots right there. We have an active database and a passive. So once our active goes down, it's automatically going to promote our passive and promote it to our live and active database, right? That's the pilot light. So it's going to take time to spin up. It's going to take, once again, a little time to spin up. It's not going to be able to handle all the traffic right away. We might have users complaining because it's taking a while to spin up. No, well, that's true, JM. The only problem with that is there's a cost with that, JM. Now that's true. That's true, but even when I go here, this is my failover, right? This once against my primary. But see, I got my global database at the bottom, right? So I got my global tables, right? So this I won't lose any data, and it's going to be up in 5 minutes or less. But this is going to cost me more, JM. If I do Amazon DB with 2 global tables, it's going to cost me more, right? Because it knows it's giving you that regional database on there. Where this, all right? Oh, that's a look. See, this right here is passive, right? So it's replicating. So when this goes down, I got to spin this up. I got to run something to change it over to active, right? So each one of those from like code, you write them hot, but you got to pay for that, Jay, right? So Amazon DynamoDB is a lot more expensive than the other one we just looked. Not a lot more, but it's more expensive. Then this right here is active on both sides. So now if this is late at night, I might go down to one server, right? But even if I go down to one server, I got to pay for it. If I got an application server, I got to pay for it, right? I got DynamoDB, right, which is active, right? So this configuration is going to cost me a little more than this configuration. These are just tables, and the DynamoDBs running this one. I got full DynamoDB in my region, right? So it's going to be quicker, right? I got the backup, so that's going to cost me a little more money, Jane. So that's the thing from a client standpoint is, do they want to pay that extra money? But you're right, you got a lot of more options and features you could use. It's just more of a money thing, right? So then DNSSEC, we just touched on this. A lot of people don't know there's different ways you can hack a DNS from Route 53 or on-prem or even from the cloud, the big providers, right? So what can you do to lock down your DNS to make sure it doesn't get hacked, right? AWS now supports DNSSEC extension, signing on public zones for Amazon Route 53, and validation of Amazon Route 53 resolvers. DNSSEC is a specification that provides data integrity and insurance for DNS and help customers meet compliance mandates. For example, FedRAMP and security standards such as NIST. When you enable DNSSEC signing for a hosted zone, Route 53 adds cryptographic signatures to your DNS records. However, signing by itself is not sufficient to secure your zone. You also have to establish a chain of trust to your zone. When you enable DNSSEC validation to your VPC and Route 53 resolver, the resolver validates those signatures, confirming that no one's tampered with the record. This helps protect you against DNS spoofing, cache poisoning, or other DNS-related man-in-the-middle attacks. So my next slide, we just talked about it. So we have an attacker. He's going to inject a fake DNS record. When you as the user go to get that DNS record to resolve the IP, it sends you to a fake attacker's website. So here, each one of those records will be signed with a cryptographic signature. So if he injects a fake one, when you go get it, it won't have your signature on it for your company. Therefore, you would know that DNS record was fake, and you wouldn't file for the DNS spoofing, right? So I just want to touch on that. You know, we do security on my channel, and we're going to dig on that. I was hoping to lab today, but I didn't get my lab set up. I forgot I had to buy a whole DNS record that I haven't bought for my website yet. I'm lacking, so, but it's okay. It's football season, so. But that's again. So just go check on that. That's the DNSSEC. A lot of people are not hip to that. Once again, I do a lot of NIST and FedRAMP, so that's a requirement for your DNS security, so you wouldn't get a spoofing or man-in-the-middle attack, right? So those records in that DNS server from Amazon, you would sign it with your KMS key that you would use. So when your users went out there and looked at the DNS server for your VPC, they would have your cryptographic signature on it, and hopefully it wouldn't be hacked. So how you doing, Melissa Jane? We just wrapping up. Everybody go check her out. She has a beautiful channel too. I need to go visit her. I just been studying so much. I ain't been going around. But yeah, so that's your DNS spoofing. You want to keep your website safe. And two is, and we talk a little bit about that compliance work, FedRAMP and this, right? I should put those in red. Two of my favorite compliances on the planet. So that's all I had. Let me drop the link. I guess my man B2B left. I asked him a question. I'm gonna have to go track him down. Nah, that's my guy. So yeah, let's go back real quick and just look at the failover. I think like Jim was talking, there's the basic failover, especially a lot of people how they're getting their feet wet in AWS. They're taking their on-prem stuff instead of doing their disaster recovery on-prem. They're spinning it up in the cloud. Right, so that's the easy way to do it. Two is they get their feet wet, then it's easier because you don't want to have more resources on-prem that you're paying for. They're a lot easier to spin up in the cloud. They're a lot easier to auto scale. You can do your pass. I mean, once again, you can have a VPN encrypted tunnel, so none of that is visible to the internet. Right, so I think that's a good way to get your feet wet. Once again, this is it. Backup and store, pilot light, warm standby, multi-site active, right? We talk about disaster recovery. That's again a hidden gem, especially on compliance. Making sure people have that set up right so they can use it. So I think that's all I had today. Shout out to Person Center Cyber. Share me with the super chat. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'll probably go get some barbecue with that, even though I'm on a diet. Shout out to me. I got to do better in 2022. 2023 almost here. The year is flying by. So definitely go check out her channel. Check out B2B. Check out Melissa James. She's always having a beautiful channel. So that's all I got for it. I'm about to watch a little football and relax. Monday's almost here. I got to do a couple risk assessments tonight for a couple projects for Monday. They're super short, so I could do them in my sleep. I got one done, so I need to just get one more, couple hours. And I'm going to do that online too. How do you do a risk assessment on software? How do you do risk analysis on, once again, software and vendors and projects so people can sign off on them? Once again, Professor Black Ops, cybersecurity for the people. Thanks for joining me. Check out the replay. Everybody have a great day.